again! In this chapter, we'll bake the rig. So, as a general rule, we first bake the objects and we bake the armature last. As you already know, when you select the blend rig armature and you go to the armature data panel, there you will find a blend rig tab with options for the blend rig armature. In the same way, when you select an object, you will also find a blend rig tab for that object. But in the case of mesh objects, you will find the buttons that will let you bake those objects. In this case, as the mesh deform cage does not have any shape keys on it, we do not need the Bake to Shape key checkbox enabled. So, when we press the Bake Mesh button, you will notice that the mesh deform cage is deformed in a weird way. But don't worry, that is normal. This happens because the mesh deform cage has adopted the new proportions, but the armature is still deforming it. So the mesh is actually getting a double deformation. But all this will be fixed when we bake the armature. Optionally, we can also bake the proxy mesh that we will use when creating a low-resolution version of our character. Finally, we can go and bake the armature. While still being in reproportion mode, we can press the Bake Armature button. Now notice how the meshes have come back to normal, but with the newly adopted proportions. Also, the lattices have adopted this new position. On the other hand, if we go to Edit mode, we will see that the armature has been baked into this new proportion, which is actually its new rest pose. So, after doing this, and within Armature Edit mode, I will run several operators. First, I'll press the Fix Joints button. After baking, some of the bones of the armature get misaligned, and this is fixed by pressing this button. This operation can take about 1 minute to process. And that's it! Now you see that all the joints are aligned again. The second step is to calculate the roll angles automatically, and for that we press the Calc Rolls button. As you can see, the rolls of the bones are not aligned either, so this button comes in handy. This will also take a couple of minutes to process, so in the meantime, let me show you some options that you have for these operators. Notice that you have the X Mirror option, and you also have the Selected Bones Only option. In most cases, you won't need to use this at all, but if you're highly customizing the rig, you may need to use those options. Then, the Store Roll Angles button will save the roll angle in each bone. I added this option because sometimes the roll angles get messed because of how Blender manages that data. So, with this option you can manually store the roll angles. And then you have the Restore Roll Angles button in case those roll angles get broken and you need to restore them. I've seen roll angles getting broken, sometimes when you go in and out edit mode. So, if you see any weird behavior in the rig when you're in post mode, like controllers that have gotten inverted or something like that, well, check out the roll angles, because that may be the problem. Well, the operator has finished, and as you see, all the roll angles are aligned now. Finally, I'm going to enable and isolate the Bone Rolls layer. In this layer, you will find the bones that determine the roll angles of the whole armature. If your character is in T-pose, in 90% of the cases you won't need to use this, as the automatic rolls calculation tends to work with most characters. But you have this layer in case you want to customize the rolls of the bones. So, if you change the roll angles of the bones from this layer, and then you press the Custom Aligns button, all the bones from the armature will match the roll angles from these bones. In this case, I just want to check the rolls from the fingers. So, I'm going to change the roll of the master controller of the fingers so that it matches the rotation that the actual geometry finger has. And then I'm going to align all the phalanges to that master bone. For that, I shift select the phalanges, and then I select the master bone, and with Ctrl N, I do Recalculate Roll to Active Bone. And now I'll go tweaking the rest of the fingers, and then I'll align the phalanges again. So, the rest of the bones of the armature seem to be well oriented, and now I'm going to run the custom alliance operator so that the rolls of all of the bones of the armature match the rolls of the ones from this layer. Done. Now, if I enable all the layers of the armature, you'll see that all the overlapping bones are aligned with the ones that I have just changed. So now I'm glad with the result, so I'm going to press the Store Roll Angles button to save the roll angles, and I'm going to go out of edit mode. Before I turn off the reproportion mode, I'm going to press the Reset Constraints button. This is because with all the things I've just did, I may have changed the length of some bones. So this operator called Reset Constraints will make sure that all the constraints work properly with this new length. So, whenever you change the length of a bone in edit mode, make sure that you press the Reset Constraints button afterwards. So now I can turn off reproportion mode, and you can see that the armature is already working properly in pose mode, and also that the mesh deform cage is already working with the armature and with these newly adopted proportions. This finalizes the technical rigging process. In the next chapter, we'll start focusing on the artistic side, which is deformation. See you next time!